All right, good afternoon, everyone. Eric Hayden here with Carl Barnes, Senior Forecaster at the Weather Service here in Morehead City. This will be our last briefing on the impacts from this strong nor'easter through the nighttime tonight. We're showing you the radar right now. Pretty much what you see is what you get. I know across the Outer Banks, your rainfall has been much more scattered, but these pockets of darker yellows are some periods of heavy rain. The moderate to heavy rain so far this afternoon has really focused on Morehead City area and points west. You can see some of these darker greens and yellows back across Duplin County. We're going to show you here in a second. These are the areas that we're most concerned with in terms of heavy rainfall. But pretty much what you see is what you get for the next couple hours. Heavy rain, moderate to heavy at times. Could see some ponding of water on the roadways. A couple things we're watching for this evening: winds as they pick up, coastal flood threat, and also the threat for severe weather in the form of a couple tornadoes as we get into the evening. So we're going to dive into some of our models that are doing a good job with the forecast so far. So we're going to take it forward. This is a model reflectivity. It's as of now. It's doing a really good job. The yellows showing the rain across our area. Notice the darker orange and even some red down towards South Carolina. They've had a tremendous amount of rain across coastal South Carolina this morning. As we animate this into the afternoon and evening, watch how that just shifts up over our area, but specifically across the western part of our area. So by 4 o'clock, New Bern, Jacksonville, and especially west over across Duplin County, Lenoir County, getting into parts of southern Greene County as well. Those areas are most at risk for that heavy rain. As we get into early tonight, it may become scattered where we have pockets of heavy rain, then there's a lull, another pocket of heavy rain, then a lull, especially places like Beaufort, Morehead City, eastward across the Outer Banks. The rain may not be as steady as what you're seeing now, but notice to the west, again, Duplin County, Lenoir, even Jones County, as we zoom in, this is 7 o'clock, that rain is continuous. These areas stand the best chance for hour after hour after hour of rainfall, even into 9 or 10 o'clock tonight. And then gradually, as we head through the overnight, the heaviest rain starts to shift east. And then as we get toward daybreak on Monday, things really start to diminish from west to east. So we're in the thick of the heavy rain now. Primarily, that rain threat's going to be west of Highway 17, back through Onslow County and Duplin County. And we'll kind of emphasize that here with the model depiction of how much rain we expect through midnight or 1 a.m. The other thing I want to do, I'm going to step it back a couple hours. We mentioned that the steady heavy rain may start to lift northward across our area this evening. The thing that we're going to watch real carefully here at the office, we're bringing in extra staffing for that severe weather threat. Notice between 5 and 8 o'clock, as that rain becomes more scattered, we start to get these lines of potential storms coming in off the water. So as we get in through the evening time, even 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, these lines that are coming in off the water, we're going to carefully watch those for enhanced areas of wind, perhaps a few tornadoes. That will be the main window for severe weather threat, 6, 7 o'clock this evening through about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And again, we're going to be carefully watching these lines of storms as they come in off the ocean itself. So don't let your guard down. We fully expect by the coast for that steady rain to start to lift north and become more scattered. It is during that time that we're concerned with that severe weather threat actually peaking. So now we're going to show you a couple forecast graphics. These are largely unchanged. Area. So places like Duplin County, as we mentioned, Lenoir, Jones, western part of Craven, down through Jacksonville. It will be in these areas that stand the best chance if we're going to see rainfall amounts of more than 4 inches. Farther to the east, you're still going to see a steady rain the next couple hours. You're still likely going to have more than 1 inch or 2 of rain, but amounts really start to drop off as we head toward portions of the Outer Banks. As far as wind speeds go, this has been on track. We're getting some of those pretty strong winds out over the waters now. You'll notice inland 25, 30 miles per hour, so not a huge wind event, but as we've been stressing, down toward the coast, so any of these areas along the Crystal Coast or even the western end of the Pamlico Sound, if you're open facing to the water on a southeast wind, the wind is going to blow really hard through the night tonight, especially the first part of the night, and then by far the strongest winds, still expecting gusts 50 to 60 miles per hour, Ocracoke and Hatteras Island. And as we mentioned before, just over the water, we're not talking over the land areas, hurricane force gusts possible out over the Gulf Stream toward Diamond Shoals. Last couple of days, we've really talked about how the wind is going to be primarily from the southeast, and then it's going to shift into the southwest, and that will cause a variety of coastal flood issues. Carl, you've been in the office since this morning. We've already seen some minor water issues as expected, but we're really concerned as we get into this evening with that coastal flood threat.
Yeah, right. So right now we're actually still just seeing the last little bit of the high tide filter through some of our rivers down here along the Crystal Coast, Onslow County. We're talking like the New River area, White Oak River, Newport River. That high tide's pushing in. We did hit minor flood stage at Beaufort, likely had at least a little bit of water maybe on Front Street and some areas around Morehead City, and then also maybe some areas around like Sneads Ferry and some of the other really low-lying areas here along the coast, mostly west of Cape Lookout. One saving grace is the swell is still building, but it wasn't particularly powerful so far this morning, so we did have very limited overwash along portions of the southern Outer Banks. But as we go through the day, conditions will continue to deteriorate. Our winds will steadily continue to increase, definitely through the rest of the afternoon, and then at least through most, if not all of the evening, we'll see those winds continuing to increase out of the southeast for the direction. So as that happens, firstly, those strongest winds are already offshore. There is very large swell that's going to be building. So focusing firstly on the overwash threat for the beaches, with that primarily southeast swell, that's going to be mostly south of Cape Hatteras, maybe a little bit of overwash up in the zone between Cape Hatteras and Rodanthe or Pea Island as well. But most of the overwash impacts are going to be from Cape Hatteras southward along our coast. This evening's high tide is going to be between about 11 p.m. and midnight on the ocean, and then, as usual, that takes 1 to 2 hours to filter through our rivers and then get a little bit further inland as well. So with that high tide, we're going to see water levels similar to maybe a little bit higher than they were this morning, but with a lot of increased swell, we do have an elevated overwash threat. And then also along areas like the Western Bogue Sound, maybe portions of Core Sound as well, where they're more exposed to that southeast wind. That's where we could see higher water levels than this morning as well, with the wind-driven effects of the surge. So what we're looking at is probably widespread minor coastal flooding for the coast, Crystal Coast, Onslow County, southern Outer Banks, probably widespread minor coastal flooding this evening, and then some localized moderate coastal flooding. And then on the beach side, especially for areas that are have vulnerable dune structures that are more vulnerable to that overwash, now we're probably thinking it's more going to be like moderate impacts for a lot of those overwash areas. Portions of 12, especially eastern Ocracoke Island, areas just east of Hatteras Village, where there's overwash vulnerability. Maybe even the north end of Buxton, we might be able to see a little bit of overwash. And then definitely the eastern side of North Topsail Beach. Those are the areas where we're going to be looking for those moderate overwash impacts, potential for significant amount of water on NC12. Maybe some other roadways might be closed, certainly some flooding of properties. So that's going to be our ocean side impacts. Now, as we switch gears to the sound side, especially looking at that steadily building northeast wind, we're going to be looking at all the water from the Pamlico Sound being pushed toward the north and the west. And right now our focus continues to be along the Pamlico and Pumgo rivers for our highest water levels. 3 to 6 feet of inundation is pretty much the same number we've been saying for the last couple of days. That's still looking really good based on our most recent wind forecast. The one thing I really want to hit on, though, is that is a steady increase of the winds through the evening. So it's just going to be a steady piling up of the water. But then maybe late evening, like Eric was hitting on, we might have a little more of a convective or some stronger storms come through. And those strong wind gusts associated with those storms could cause at least brief jumps in the water level. So, just because maybe we get to 6 or 7 p.m. and there's not much flooding going on, does not mean we're in the clear. We're going to see those water levels continuing to rise through the evening until maybe overnight tonight. We might start to see a lull in the winds, and that'll allow the water levels to come back down. Looking on the Neuse River, especially around Newbern and Bridgeton, still looking at probably 2 to 4 feet of inundation, again, peaking late evening, and maybe even peaking around the time where we see some of our stronger storms this evening. And then shifting gears up toward the Outer Banks and a little bit further north on the Pamlico Sound, still looking at mostly a threat initially for like mainland Hyde County and Dare counties, with some of that Pamlico Sound water pushing up. That's probably going to be something like 1 to 3 feet of inundation along those areas from Englehart, Stumpy Point, and maybe even up toward Roanoke Island. But then as this low goes past and the winds switch and start to come out of probably the west or maybe west-northwest, that's where we're going to see that water pretty quickly switch sides and what we call slosh back to the east part of the Pamlico Sound and maybe the Albemarle Sound as well. So a little higher confidence for the Pamlico Sound, still looking at Soundside, mostly Soundside Hatteras Island, getting Soundside inundation of 2 to 4 and now maybe even 3 to 4 feet on the backside of that low tomorrow morning, with that water really rapidly rising around sunrise tomorrow morning and really through the morning hours, continuing to see some water level rises with portions of 12 likely inundated at this point. So still a coastal flood warning in effect for Hatteras Island for that backside surge as well on the Sound side, on the Pamlico Sound. And then northern Outer Banks Sound side, still a little bit lower confidence there, but we do think that we're going to have enough of a duration tomorrow morning of gusty west winds where we'll be able to get probably 1 to 3 feet of inundation for like portions around especially northern Roanoke Island, Soundside, Nags Head, maybe Colleton, Kitty Hawk Bay, those areas could still see 1 to 3 feet of inundation, which could put water on some of the roadways, flood some very low-lying properties, is what we're looking at. But as we go through tomorrow, we're going to see, especially afternoon, we're going to see those westerly winds really diminish pretty significantly, and that should allow those water levels to subside there along the Soundside Outer Banks. So that's what we're looking at right now. We have obviously a lot of moving parts, so we'll continue to update you in Slack as we get these observations in and see what's going on.
All right, Carl. Carl mentioned we have a lot going on. We kind of mentioned this in the beginning. If you missed the very beginning of the webinar, we showed you how the steady rain is over us now, and that will continue. But in some areas, it's going to start to become more scattered this evening, and that's where we're carefully watching these lines of storms that may come in off the ocean. We still think the highest threat for severe weather through about 1, 2 o'clock in the morning will be in the coastal areas. Anyone shaded in yellow in and near these areas should be prepared for severe weather tonight. Main threat, damaging winds, possibility of a few tornadoes. We mention this all the time. Everybody going to bed tonight, make sure that the community is informed about having multiple ways to get those warnings. So leave this on, make sure it's not turned on Do Not Disturb. If you have a weather radio, make sure it has batteries in it and you're able to get those warnings, because often they're very short lived and they happen very quickly. So the warning time, you only have a few moments to take shelter. So we certainly want folks to do that. A little bit of housekeeping. This will be our last webinar and briefing. Carl and I were just chatting about this. We don't like to throw around the tropical term because it is December, but we hope that the webinars have highlighted the severity of this storm. In terms of meteorology, the models have it deepening, strengthening from it's on the coast of Georgia right now, up over our area later tonight in the 980s for millibars of pressure. That would be the strength of a low-end hurricane. Impacts in our community, Pamlico Pungo River, will be probably similar to what we saw with tropical systems just a couple months ago. So a lot of you are experienced in our community. Some folks are new, and we really want to convey the message that we are year-round here with impacts. It is an El Nino year. We have talked about this, that we expect a wetter than normal winter and the potential for more of these storms. So I hope this is the last one we have in December, but based on the pattern, it may not be. So really getting out that message that if you live in a coastal area, we get these storms year-round. Carl mentioned, tomorrow morning on the Outer Banks, you might want to, with those values, think about moving your cars. Those are some things that we usually do. If you live in Washington, Bath, Bellhaven, you've had some issues back in the fall. If you had issues before, you might want to move stuff upstairs. Unfortunately, we get a lot of practice with weather across our area like this, but we really hope that these webinars highlighted the severity of the potential for that weather through tonight into tomorrow morning. We mentioned this will be our last briefing and webinar. We're staffing up. We've got extra people coming in here to the office this evening, so we will be on radar and issuing those warnings if needed. As always, if you have a question, call the office. We're certainly here to take those questions. At this point, we'll hop out. I saw the first hand raised was from Beaufort County, so we'll get you. And if you have any questions in the chat, we'll certainly answer those. So hang tight, and we'll get these questions.